Right, hi there, and today we're going to look at how I can use Aviary Education to do some simple photo editing to make some alien landscapes. Now, the first thing we need to do in the lesson is to find some nice landscapes. Now, I've already got some a landscape found in Flickr. Now, this is not a bad place to find some nice landscapes. There's often very artistic ones, but something you need to think about when using this with kids is to talk about the licensing behind it. You could also have things already saved on your server as well, but I'm just going to have this downloaded, so I'm just going to download this version, large. So I'm just going to save the image, give it a name, what I know, landscape, and then save it. So now that's saved on my computer. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to upload this into Aviary. Now this is the login page for my school. First thing is I'm going to log in as my class, which you need to do beforehand. It's fairly simple to do. Now this gives me the stream of everything in my school. I'm just going to mine only because that gives me nothing, because I know this class has got nothing designed. And then I'm going to click New Curation and click Create Images, and this opens up a new window which you might resize. And this is the photo editing or image editing called Phoenix within the Aviary packages. Now I'm going to load an image file, and I'm going to browse for my image, and I know what I called it, landscape. Then I'm going to click upload, and so it's going to upload the picture I downloaded from Flickr. You can do it through URL, but Flickr doesn't really allow that easily. And then here is my image. I'm just going to minimize that. So there's my image. Now in order to fiddle around with this to turn it into an alien landscape, there's a number of tools built in within the Phoenix Aviary image editor curator. So up here where it says image, you can look at a number of different things where you can fiddle around with the levels, the brightness, the hue and saturation. You can invert the colours, you can desaturate it. So for example, just by inverting the colours, I turn it into quite an alien landscape instantly. But within the lesson, I want to try and encourage something a little bit more curative than that. So I'm just going to undo that. Now, the thing which has the most effect on making something look really weird is the hue and saturation. So if I click on that, this little box comes up, and basically this plays around with what it looks like. Now, brightness is quite obvious, but hue is shifting the colours. So it's taking colours out or putting them in, so making it more red or more green or more blue, depending on what the picture is. Saturation is how much of it is. So if you have a lower number, it goes almost black and white. If you have a high number, it becomes very vivid. So that's actually quite cool. I like that. And then also you can play around with the brightness. Sometimes the brightness you need to sort of tone it down a little bit. So there you go. I've just fiddled around with that, and I've got a brilliant alien landscape now. I can still do other things. I can look at the levels, and I can play around with the brightness again a bit more, which sometimes has a good effect. And the brightness and contrast, you can play around with a bit more. Contrast sometimes gets a nice effect as well. So something you've got to play around with your children and see what they like, what gives a good effect. Now, simply that's it done on a simple level. I've made my alien landscape. Now I can from there go to File, export the image, and then I can save that back to my computer in order to print it or save it or do something else with it. If I click save, it saves it online in the Aviary website. So I'm just going to save it now. And then it just quickly saves to me. Now, what I'm going to show you though, there's a couple of other tools you can use to further manipulate this photo. Now, there are a few tools on the side. There are paintbrush tools, which I'll come on to in a moment. But one of the things we can have a look at to start with is this Smudge Tool, which basically allows you to sort of smudge elements of the picture. If I click on it, now hopefully it's saved. There we go. If I click on this tool, there's a couple of different versions of it. The blur tool is quite nice. You can change the size of the tool, but you can blur the river. So if I run it over here, I've blurred it up a little bit. So that's just something which gives a slightly different effect. Might make it look a bit more like running water. I'm just going to quickly blur this up. And then you can also, if you use the Smudge Tool, and this is quite nice with the clouds, to sort of play around with the clouds a bit, is if you use it, you can smudge what's going with the clouds at the tops to get sort of slightly different shapes. You have to click, and so you can just subtly change the picture. Now if you do this on things like mountains, it makes the mountains look like they're melting, which again might be something the kids want to do with their particular picture, but for the most part, doing this just does some subtle changes to make it look a little bit different. But you can blur other areas as well. You can smudge the ground as well. It doesn't quite look quite as good as the clouds, but it's just a tool you can use. You can experiment with it. And so far we've fiddled around the hue and contrast. We've looked at smudging some effects to make the picture look a little bit different. There are some filters you can add as well. You can blur the picture a bit, which in some cases looks quite good, in other cases it doesn't. It depends on the picture you start with. But you can also look at pointillizing it or erode the picture, and these settings you can play with for ages. But it gives some interesting effects which you might want to use with the children in your class. The final thing I'm going to show, which really sort of, if we're thinking of this from a lesson point of view, would probably be the second lesson, is you can also look at layers. Now, the way layers work within most photo editing or graphics programs is you've got to imagine sort of layers of acetate, thinking back to the old school OHTs. And so if I look at my layers, I've got two layers here. If I turn off this layer, my picture vanishes. And so what I can do, I can add a layer, and then I can actually draw on that layer. I could always draw on the picture as well, but it's nice to keep things separate, because also if I draw on this, I will show you what I mean. If I get my tool, I'm going to make it a thinnish pen, and I've got black, and I'm going to try and draw a castle, for example. I can draw my castle, but if I make a mistake, if I use the rubber tool, I rub out the whole picture. So I'm just going to undo that, and so if I use my layer, I can then start to draw again. I'm just going to select my pen, and if I draw my castle, I make a mistake. This time, if I use the rubber, it only rubs out that layer, so it just makes things a little bit more neat. But if I'm going to get my castle drawn, let's see if I can quickly draw a castle. And also it allows things like the fill tool to work, because if you weren't using layers, the fill tool would not work at all. You'd have to sort of colour it in manually. So if I can find a slightly better colour, and sort of a brown, so where you've got to be a bit more creative with your colours. But there's an awful lot of options with colours. Let's go with that colour, that's fine. And then I can, I did not select the colour I picked, which is a bit annoying. So click OK, and then you can run it into brown, and you can add more and more details. And you can keep adding layers, so I can add another layer, and I can add in some white, or some sort of red dragons, which I can use my pen tool, which I've still got red selected, which is okay. And I could use a different tool, like that one for example. I can make the size a bit bigger, close the window, and then I can have a go at drawing some sort of dragon with wings, possibly in the sky, to help make this fantasy world or alien world more effective. But if I don't like the dragon, there you go, it's gone, and I can bring it back, and I can also bring back the castle. Hopefully that gives you enough to sort of start working with Aviary, and this is going to be useful for you teaching your children in your lessons. Thank you very much.